We're live, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm in studio. Back in Central Texas, it is Friday, the 25th day of November, 2011, and we're going to be live here for the next 3 hours. We're going to have one of our in-house reporters and researchers and Ron Paul activist, Richard Reeves, in studio in an hour and a half from now, about 10, 15 minutes, to talk about the fact that Ron Paul's surging into number 1 or number 2 place in every major poll, but the media continues to try to ignore that, the so-called media, and some strategies that can hopefully make sure he wins Iowa, the Iowa caucus, because that's an old-fashioned raise-your-hand type situation. Very hard for the establishment criminals to steal that. So we are going to be breaking all of that down today. Of course, we didn't have him on last Friday, so we'll have a lot to talk about. Bob Chapman on the MF Global, the Euro-controlled meltdown, and more. It's all coming up. We have the normal beatings and pepper sprayings and attacks as people run around savagely trying to get discounts on Chinese slave goods, deindustrialization goods on Black Friday. I'd like to hear your Black Friday stories. All I know is there's a lot more traffic and people running around like fools trying to get big discounts. So we'll be breaking that down today. Also, I'm sorry, it was 400 million, then 600, 700 million, then a billion, then 1.2 billion, then more than 1.2 billion. Now there's 3 billion missing, according to Reuters, from MF Global. And it's people's private accounts. And nobody's going to get in trouble because this is the new system where they take everything. And after all, it's not Black Friday. It's not UT versus A&M last night. So why does it even matter? It doesn't matter if we have an economy. Got something in my eye. That was for talking bad about UT. I got something in my eye. I had family over for Thanksgiving last night. And sure, it was a good game to sit there and watch simulated combat. One team, soldiers running out of the pit as gladiators, the others running out, and all the different generals on the sidelines and the young maidens in waiting cheering them on, all of it archetypal iconography. All a simulation of manhood and tribal war, a gelded, castrated population, devoid of thought or freedom or liberty, replacing it all with poison culture, poison food, poison water, poison souls, rotting corpses of a society who believes there's nothing more wholesome than empty tyranny. So that is all coming up today. We also have an interesting little tidbit here. Tokyo Electric Power is following what Monsanto has said in court. That when Monsanto plants a crop that infects your crops, not only do they not have liability, you have the liability. You have the liability. You have trespassed on them, even though they trespassed on you. And why? Because they say so. Just like our media says torture is good, and open borders is good. And people that don't like world government are bad because world government exists, but it also doesn't exist when the media says so. Well, now they're saying that they don't have liability for radiation released from their reactors on your property or even spent fuel rods that blasted up to 2 miles away on other people's property. In fact, you now own it, and you're radiating everyone, and you're liable. And the courts, of course, are ruling absolutely. If fuel rods shot onto your property, you're bad. And because they said so. Don't be a conspiracy theorist. Accept it. Accept it. And top people in England are saying basically that pedophiles should be able to take care of children. Yes, I'm not kidding. That's coming up as well. We'll be right back.
You may be arrested.
All right, I am back in the saddle again, back here at home base. That's Central Texas, deep in the heart of Texas, Austin. We're going to be live on the air here for at least the next 3 hours. And then, of course, there's InfoWars Nightly News this evening, 7 o'clock. I want to give the number out here in a moment to talk about any issue you wish to discuss. But first, I do want to mention just some of the news that's going to be coming up throughout the broadcast today. But I've literally probably got more than 200 articles here in front of me, and a lot of this I've read over. Some of this I haven't even gotten to yet. I was looking up on screen about a minute before we went into this segment, and I saw on Infowars.com and Prisonplanet.com the headline, Green Debacle, tens of thousands of abandoned wind turbines now litter American landscape. And it's funny because I have footage of this driving out west. I drove through New Mexico, into Arizona, and then into southern Utah, and then back. And all along the way, in Texas and other states, I would see wind turbines, the big giant ones, off on the horizon, not turning, even when there was wind. And then I'd drive a few more miles and see wind turbines that were turning when there was wind. Some days, such high wind, the RV was almost blowing off the road. I'm talking like 50-mile-an-hour winds. And then I was going to do some investigating into this when I got back, and I shot some footage of it, and I was going to do a nightly news report. But voila, November 24th, yesterday, Thanksgiving, Natural News, Jonathan Benson, Green Debacle, tens of thousands of abandoned wind turbines now litter American landscape. And it says that 14,000 of them, more than that, and has links to all the government documents, have been abandoned because it was government programs. They would just build them, not even service them, get the government handout. That's why in Spain they said it took at least 2 jobs on top of the money it cost away from the economy to build a wind turbine. And then they never can transfer the power properly. You need to build power plants near cities because you lose a lot of the power as you transmit it down the major lines. So they've got these in England and Europe and the United States and Canada way off the middle of nowhere on mountain ridges. And then they're supposed to, or on the Texas coast, and I've seen them sitting idle on the Texas coast because it's just like all these other big energy companies where they build green buildings and then just never even hire anybody. It's just all a big scam, all a big insider deal where Al Gore and the Rothschilds and Rockefellers and Clinton and Obama are all heavily invested. It's a bunch of gangsters. Literal beacons of the green energy movement, giant wind turbines have been one of the renewable energy sources of choice for the U.S. government, which has spent billions of taxpayer dollars subsidizing the construction and use across the country. But high maintenance costs, high rates of failure, and fluctuating weather conditions that affect energy production render wind turbines expensive and inefficient, which is why more than 14,000 of them or more have since been abandoned. And then it goes through all of it. Now, again, here's my frustration. If you're watching on prisonplanet.tv, give me a document cam shot. No exaggeration. I bet if I count these articles, there are more than 200 of them on my desk, and each one is more insane than the next. I mean, look at this one. Sex offenders, including pedophiles, should be allowed to adopt. Top advisors to the government are saying in England. I mean, you can't make that up. The Tokyo Electric is saying it's your fault if their radiation got on your property and that you're basically trespassing on their radiation. That's out of mainstream news in Japan. Cannot make it up. Bonkers, cuckoo, nutcase. But the judges in Japan and here are all under globalist system. It's all standardized. And they're going to, just like Monsanto, infect your crops. You have proof you bought your non-GMO seeds. They infect your crops. They find 1% of their genetics in your crops. And then they sue you for them contaminating you. This would be like if I broke in your house while you were out of town for a month and put 10 dogs in there to go to the bathroom all over the floor. And I fed them 100 gallons of Hamburger Helper. And you come back home and there's just urine and feces knee deep. And then I sue you for trespassing against me when I broke in your house and put 20, 30, 50, 100 dogs in there, force-feeding them hamburger meat. Except that's just something that screws your house up. You got to clean up. This is genetic garbage designed to sterilize us and give us cancer. In all the documents, just type in GMO linked to cancer, birth defects. You'll just have hundreds of studies out the wazoo going back 30 years. And here they say, TEPCO, radioactive substances belong to landowners, not us. But if you actually read the full article, they're spinning it. During court proceedings concerning a radioactive golf course, Tokyo Electric Power stunned lawyers by saying the utility was not responsible for decontamination because it no longer owned the radioactive substances. You know, under common law, it goes back to the Bible, if your ox gets out and gores somebody, your big work cow, your cow that pulls trailers, gets out and runs over somebody's kid and kills them off your property, you are 100% responsible. And it's like that in every culture. They just say, no, when my ox jumped out of the pen and got mad and ran over and killed your wife or husband or child, whatever, we just don't. But then they go further, and they're saying, now you're going to have to clean it up, and you've got the liability. So it's not even as bad. It's totally insane. It goes against logic. But official media said so. Governments, corporations. It's not as bad as Monsanto because then they actually come in and then say you've stolen their property. But it's pretty darn close. Oh, here's another one. ACLU. Senators demand military lockup for Americans in battlefield defined as outside your window. And yes, the new battlefield for killing Americans without courts, arresting Americans, the military tribunals, is anywhere in the U.S., anywhere in the world. And that Americans can be arrested and held without charge or trial. Just the complete martial law. I've got that report, and it's got quotes from Ron Paul in here. But hey, does the average American care about this? Is the average American concerned about that? No, the average American is concerned about getting a discount and I guess getting their paycheck and getting out and buying some Chinese slave goods that break the first time you get it out of the box on average. They're obsessed with running out and getting into deeper debt or whatever the case is. They're not worried about cancer tripling and diabetes tripling in the last few decades. They're not worried about all the new wars. They're not worried about the hypocrisy, the Arab League meeting in Cairo while Western-backed military system machine guns crowds and puts in Sharia law. They're meeting there to discuss human rights abuses in Syria that, if they are going on, are minimal compared to Egypt. They're not worried about that. The Arab League is there saying, yes, we want military action, and the Russians have got warships off the coast to defend, and then the United States has got an aircraft carrier. They're getting ready to put a peaceful, remember those, non-military, no-fly zone that means bombing the whole country. And then when they put the al-Qaeda rebels in, as they did in Libya, literally flying the al-Qaeda flag, they'll call it humanitarian. Humanitarian. It's humanitarian that they've got 7,000 people at least admitted in a concentration camps, and they're systematically murdering people. More than 40,000. No, it's peaceful and humanitarian that this is happening. I mean, I'm living in 1984, and there's all these news articles I've got about where the government's openly calling for censorship of talk radio, demonizing yours truly for influencing the White House shooter who thought he was Jesus. They're really gearing up to steal that. So we are going to be breaking all of that down today. Of course, we didn't have him on last Friday, so we'll have a lot to talk about. Bob Chapman on the MF Global, the Euro-controlled meltdown, and more. It's all coming up. We have the normal beatings and pepper sprayings and attacks as people run around savagely trying to get discounts on Chinese slave goods, deindustrialization goods on Black Friday. I'd like to hear your Black Friday stories. All I know is there's a lot more. We're live, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm in studio. Back in Central Texas, it is Friday, the 25th day of November, 2011, and we're going to be live here for the next 3 hours. We're going to have one of our in-house reporters and researchers and Ron Paul activist, Richard Reeves, in studio in an hour and a half from now, about 10, 15 minutes, to talk about the fact that Ron Paul's surging into number 1 or number 2 place in every major poll, but the media continues to try to ignore that, the so-called media, and some strategies that can hopefully make sure he wins Iowa, the Iowa caucus, because that's an old-fashioned raise-your-hand type situation, very hard for the establishment criminals to